The United California Bank Robbery. How a Youngstown gang traveled to LA to rip off Richard Nixon himself and stole $30 million in the process. One of the biggest bank heists in American history, this one takes place in Cleveland, Ohio. The target, the vault of the United California Bank in the quiet Laguna Niguel, California. The date, March 24, 1972. The bank robbing crew spent a weekend getting their target haul, $30 million, rumored to belong to Richard Nixon, money obtained as a presidential campaign donation from the infamous Jimmy Hoffa. The Teamsters boss paid the millions in exchange for a presidential pardon. Now, before we get into the juicy bits, make sure to smash the like button, subscribe to our channel, and click that notification bell to get more videos on the greatest robberies in history. Now let's get to the proper juicy bits of the first episode. We begin with the president, and in 1972 the POTUS was Richard Nixon. The year prior, in December of 1971, Nixon convinced the Teamsters' incarcerated leader Jimmy Hoffa to make a $3 million campaign contribution in exchange for Hoffa's presidential pardon. Hoffa ended up making the contribution and got out of jail, but was not too thrilled at having to pay for his freedom in that way. Hoffa was also made aware of Nixon's stash, where he kept Nixon's milk money, called as such as most of it came from Texas dairy farmers in a bid to fix milk prices. Hoffa's aim was to get his $3 million back. He knew which bank the milk money was in, which safety deposit boxes contained it, and he knew that the total haul from all of them was around $30 million. So, Hoffa took action. The information regarding the bank and other details was discreetly handed over to our stars of the show, the bank heist crew. Led by Amil Dinsio, 5 men carried out the United California Bank Robbery in 1972, accompanied by another pair as a personal begrudging favor. The 7 accomplices, the Dinsio brothers Amil and James, their nephews Harry and Ronald Barber, Amil's brother-in-law Charles Mulligan, and buddies Phil Christopher and Charles Brokel, tagging along at Dinsio's client's request. Most were from Youngstown, while Christopher and Brokel came from Cleveland. Amil and James Dinsio were the masterminds behind the heist, Amil being the main organizer and alarm expert, and James being the explosives expert, alongside designing and creating all of the tools needed specifically for the bank robbery to be carried out. Charles Mulligan was the getaway driver, renowned in the business for his reliability and trustworthiness. The nephews Harry and Ronald were extra muscle, there to help out with carrying out the heist as valuable team members. And the final 2, Christopher and Brokel, were unwelcome additions to the Dinsios. They were forced upon the crew by the original client who contacted Amil about the haul, and were only there as muscle men and lookouts. Neither Christopher nor Brokel had any skills to bring to the table, their only experience being as petty thieves. Brokel ended up helping break open deposit boxes inside the vault once broken in, and Christopher was simply a lookout on the walkie-talkie, not going inside the vault or helping with the actual process. And in the end, Dinsio's reluctance to include them proved right, as their presence in the mission led to everything falling apart. The total score of this heist ended up being estimated at nearly $30 million, just as predicted. After gaining entry to the vault using dynamite, the crew then got in and started getting to the safety deposit boxes. It was well planned, well practiced, drama-filled, and featured so many events that would seem out of place in fiction that it's really strange to think that this isn't a better-known heist story, or that it isn't a movie. Someone get me the Coen brothers. Before we show you how this perfect heist turned upside down, take a second and subscribe to our channel and let your friends join our journey of the greatest robberies in history. Whilst this heist was indeed completely flawlessly carried out and the thieves made away with the enormous fortune, they did make a mistake. They struck again in Ohio just a few months later with the same MO. Same crime, same methods, everything was the same, and the FBI linked the two up. Thanks to the connection between the 2 robberies, the FBI was able to start tracking travel records, and so they were able to discover that between the 2 robberies, 5 of the crew members flew into California on the same flight using their own real names. The sixth, James Dinsio, arrived in California on a separate flight, but just 1 day away from the robbery. Besides the flight records, the FBI then investigated and uncovered the townhouse that the crew had been using as a headquarters, rented out by one of the members. At first, authorities were unable to find any substantial evidence. That is, until they checked the dishwasher. The robbers had been meticulous, erasing their presence from everything, except for the dirty dishes they didn't set to clean before returning to Ohio. The fingerprints gathered from these dirty dishes led to federal arrest warrants, leading to the arrest and conviction of each member of the crew. Alongside their arrests, much of the loot from Nixon's milk money as well as the Ohio heist was recovered. An early internet blogger, Keith Sharon, was looking through the Orange County Register archive in the early 2000s. In search of curious, interesting, or downright fabulous crimes to write about and follow up on, Sharon heard about the Youngstown crew heist from a colleague. Sharon ended up tracking down Harry Barber, Dinsio's nephew, getaway driver, and alumnus of the FBI's 10 Most Wanted list. Sharon reached out to Barber, asking for an interview about the robbery over dinner. Despite his initial reluctance, Harry Barber ended up meeting with Keith Sharon and discussing the heist at length in a California Denny's. Through his interview, Barber explained what role Nixon played in the whole ordeal. Before the 1971 Federal Election Campaign Act, which aimed to legitimize elections and avoid corruption and various other forms of morally grave eyes for votes, there was little that was truly off-limits to presidential candidates. As the law was soon to be imposed at the time, Nixon desperately needed to get as many shady votes secured as possible. So President Richard Nixon reached out to the International Brotherhood of Teamsters. This was a labor union and a powerful organization at that, at the head of which was Jimmy Hoffa. Nixon reached out to Hoffa, serving a 13-year prison sentence for jury tampering and bribery. In exchange for a humble campaign contribution of $3 million and the official endorsement of the Teamsters, Richard Nixon offered Hoffa a presidential pardon, his freedom. Hoffa, only being in his 4th year of prison and having a whopping 9 left, reluctantly agreed to being banned from union activities completely for the following 8 years, paid the $3 million, endorsed Nixon's campaign, and walked out of prison in December of 1971. With his pride greatly damaged and extremely irate at the situation itself, Hoffa used his connections with the mob to follow up and find out where Nixon was keeping the millions Hoffa had to bribe him with. It was then that Dinsio and his crew came into play. And so came March 24, 1972. Using expandable foam, the crew disabled the bank's exterior alarm. The foam expanded, hardened, and disabled the clapper the alarm would use to alert authorities. A hefty blast from 16 sticks of dynamite to the roof then gave them access to the vault, allowing Dinsio and the other 5 inside while Christopher was on the lookout. One particular detail that was important was that this specific stretch of coastline, located between Dana Point and Laguna Beach, was quiet, at most with a sleepy town. This was the reason the crew were able to get in using explosives, then subsequently spend the entire weekend busting open a total count of nearly 500 safety deposit boxes, with customized sledgehammers designed and provided by James Dinsio. Once the weekend came to a close and the crew made their escape, the bank manager came in on the Monday morning to find the vault covered in debris from the concrete, various contents from deposit boxes, cash, jewels and jewelry, bonds, collectibles, urns, and ashes. One major mistake made by Dinsio and the crew was that they assumed Nixon wouldn't investigate the heist or dedicate many resources to it. The main reason? Such action would bring to light the extent of Nixon's corruption and the fact that he was in all regards the crook he denied being. As a result, their getaway was sloppy, not meticulous and perfectly cleaned up like the Dinsio's previous bank heist gigs. And that assumption was their downfall. To quote Barber as he spoke to Keith Sharon, "Usually when somebody robs a bank, they send 4 or 5 FBI agents. This man sent 125, so you know he was angry." As the heist blew into the headlines, the media estimated the total haul was as much as $30 million at the time. But the truth is, as much as we've said that, the total actual dollar amount is unknown and has long been subject to tons of speculation. This is mostly due to the various contents of the many deposit boxes broken into. Among them were jewelry, checks, sentimental items, collectibles, and many other things. And it's also speculated that some, if not many, of the safety deposit box owners were inflating or exaggerating their claims of value for the sake of insurance reimbursements. Out of the known figures was the bank's actual cash on hand, totaling about $48,000, and Nixon's money, totaling about $12 million, split up and stored in bundles of $500 and $1,000 bills. In the debris discovered by the bank manager on that Monday were securities, sentimental items, and a spilled urn of ashes. 3 months after the initial burglary on the 24th of March, the FBI apprehended Dinsio and most of his crew. They were convicted, and the crime created the biggest FBI manhunt at the time. Despite being guilty of the crime, Dinsio believes that the FBI framed him with stolen fingerprints in order to falsify and create a connection to the getaway vehicle used and the rented townhouse used as an HQ. "Let me tell you something, them boys are good. I'll give them credit, they got a job to do, but do it right," he later said of the matter. Dinsio also believes Brokaw worked as an FBI informant against him to beat a murder case he was facing on the side unrelated to the 2 heists. Following his conviction and over the years, Dinsio has amassed hundreds of documents to prove and fight his case. In 1994, he filed a complaint alleging corruption in the investigation, which eventually concluded no wrongdoing and led nowhere. Now 83 years old, Dinsio speaks of a few regrets about his high-rise life of crime. "You lose your family, your kids grow up, that's a lot of years. It's crazy, but we just kept going and just got screwed up," he said. In spite of this, however, Dinsio still reflects on his time as one of the country's most infamous bank burglars with quite a bit of pride. The Laguna Niguel robbery still remains one of the largest bank vault heists in the history of the United States. Coming up in the next episode, a diamond heist that lasted an entire weekend without police noticing. The value of the stolen diamonds was estimated at around 100 million euros. Tell us which heist you think's coming up in the comments section down below. And don't forget to check out more videos like this one on our channel and heading to the description for more.